Very good.
That's all we got to do.
All right.
Jared, thanks for being on Hot Mic.
Thank you for having me.
We are coming in hot, and we got a table full of bourbon.
Yes,
we got
we
a
do.
bunch of bourbon in
Yes,
front
we
of us.
do.
What are we looking at here, man?
Ooh, all right. Where do you want to start? What stands out?
I got to say this one Baker's right in front of me stands out just because it's such a beautiful bottle with a very unique cap style, cork style.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've never had it before.
Great. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, should we just go with that?
Yeah,
Baker's to begin.
Absolutely. Let's
Okay.
pour ourselves a tiny little bit. You
Okay.
can smell it, and I'll tell you about it.
Cool. Yeah, will you pour me as well?
Absolutely. Not trying to get drunk here, tasting, so we'll just do some light pours. Happy to offer you any more later, though.
Yeah.
So, starting with the basics, tell me, if I tell you something is a straight bourbon whiskey, how much does that tell you? What do you know about those words?
Straight bourbon whiskey. That the mash is pure. That the mash is it's
Okay.
not multiple mashes.
So,
mixed?
yeah, you're getting at something important, which
Okay.
is the word bourbon. So you're referring to the mash bill, which is all the grains that they put in to the rest of the distilling process. And bourbon legally has to be a majority corn,
Okay.
but it doesn't have to be purely corn. And I don't know of a whiskey that has a pure mash bill. Well, I suppose if you were drinking something like a single malt whiskey, then its entire mash bill would be malted barley. So those do exist. But with bourbon, typically they're a mix. And in fact, the mash bill for this Baker 7 is 77% corn, 13% rye, and 10% malt, and malt being malted barley.
Okay.
And I'd love to tell you more about malted barley if you want to get into that later.
Yeah, man.
But the reason that bourbon is typically associated with being a little bit sweeter is because of all the corn in the mash bill.
Okay.
So another important word here is straight. All of these are going to be straight bourbons.
Okay.
And what straight means is that there's been nothing added to change the flavor or the color or anything like that. All we're having here is the bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and give it a sniff? I can definitely pick up some of the sweetness. Yeah, I'm excited to try this.
I smell sweet.
Yeah. So a couple other things that we can see on the bottle. So we can see that its barrel age is 8 years, 6 months.
Okay.
Something interesting I didn't know when I was learning about whiskey is that the bourbon tradition is different. Well, I knew the bourbon tradition was different than like the Scotch whiskey tradition, right?
You'll have to tell me about that too.
Yes, I far less informed there. I don't know if I can claim to be super informed about this even, but I can tell you a little bit.
I know the taste difference, but I'm not informed on what really goes into a Scotch.
So one interesting thing is that bourbon tends to peak kind of around 12 years of age.
Okay.
Whereas you'll find, Scotch whiskeys that are like 21 years. I just thought that was interesting that these different kinds of whiskeys, that they sort of hit their sweet spot at different times. So, you're probably not going to find on the shelf like a 20-year-old bourbon because people just want to consider that like the peak of bourbon's flavor, to my understanding. All this has a huge caveat that I'm very much an amateur getting into this and enjoying it.
No. I'm an amateur. No, you are educating me, so I absolutely love this process. You are certainly more well-informed than I am, so I want this to be, just feel it out as educational. Quick question.
Yes.
After 12 years, what is falling off? Like, what is starting to...
I'm actually not sure.
Okay.
I would love to do like a whiskey tasting class where they give you the same barrel or, the same batch aged to different time marks and have something that like maybe would be considered overaged and see what would happen. But yeah, I'm not sure what the answer to that question is, but it's a great question. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this. So other things we can see on the bottle is that it's high proof, 107. So typically, like, this Buffalo Trace, for instance, when it comes out of the barrel, it's going to be more potent than when it goes into the bottle, right? So this is 90 proof, which I think is pretty typical. And so the bourbon will be watered down to that level. Last time we hung out, you asked me a great question that I didn't have a good answer for, which was, what's the deal with people adding water to their bourbon or to their whiskeys?
Yeah.
And I actually read something that I really liked about this. I think it was on Whiskey Advocate, which I was getting into this last week.
Cool.
In order to make this purchase, to sort of try and get informed. And what they said is that one of the no matter what, your whiskey's going to have water in it, right? There's no 200 proof whiskey, and you wouldn't want to drink it anyway because it basically tastes like vodka.
Yeah.
Right. That all of the flavor notes that you're going to get in a bourbon are partially there because the water is there to sort of offset the alcohol.
Okay.
And that the alcohol flavor can be overwhelming at, something close to the actual barrel proof. Mm-hmm. And so what they recommended is that you find your ideal proof, and that varies by person. Mm-hmm. That you're getting enough of the harshness from the alcohol to get that aspect of the flavor, but that's not overwhelming everything else that's going to be in there from, everything else in the mash bill to the aging, the flavor you get from aging in the oak barrels or the other kind of barrels. And I think that's a better answer, right? That you want to find the right proof for how you enjoy whiskey and what works for your palate. Mm-hmm. I don't know what mine is. Personally, I have to admit that part of the enjoyment of some of these higher proof whiskeys for me is the harshness of the alcohol, right? That's like part of the experience. In the same way that, people who love really spicy foods, like getting kind of sweaty and like get the sting and like having your nose runny, that's part of the experience. Even if the spice didn't add an overwhelming amount of flavor, like that aspect of the experience is still desirable. And I feel like I'm kind of in that camp. We'll talk about that when we get to this rare breed because it is very high proof.
Oh, right. That's our king of the mountain.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. In that regard, definitely.
So can I taste this?
Yeah, let's go ahead and try it. Ooh, yeah. You can definitely get that nice alcohol. Okay, so another thing we see on the bottle is single barrel.
That sweetness comes through in the flavor too. I like it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, especially towards the finish. Mm-hmm. So single barrel means that all of the bourbon in this bottle came from the same barrel, and so that's sort of I don't know if premium is the right word, but like it just requires more effort to be able to sell whiskey that way.
Yeah.
So it tends to be more of like a special project.
Okay.
And, for instance, like there are Wild Turkey bourbons. There are other like bourbons that, Wild Turkey sells that aren't this rare breed line that are made in a more economical way.
Okay.
So single barrel, just kind of a special marker.
And what would be the price point on this Baker's bottle?
I believe it was about $55 or $60.
Okay. And now, is that typical for a single barrel? Like when you get to that level, are you sitting right around 50 to 60?
So this is actually another interesting thing that I learned, which is that I assumed that blended whiskeys, coming from not the whiskey world, I assumed that blended whiskeys would be, cheaper, easier to produce, that it would just be a less desirable quality, right? Mm-hmm. But I found out that that's not the case. That two whiskeys I have that are more expensive than these bottles are both blended whiskeys. And that whiskeys can be blended for sort of like the artistry of it, that you can take different whiskeys with different qualities, different strengths to them, different notes, and blend them together to create the final bottle that has all that, right? That can be part of the artistry of creating the whiskey.
Okay.
And that some very fancy whiskeys are blended. So it's not necessarily that single barrel is better, but you could think of it as it's more pure, which has its own kind of, people get attached to that kind of thing. And I'm certainly curious about it, right? Tasting something pure gives you a comparison point, right, to understand and compare it to things that are blended. Or even things with like a different mash bill. Another thing that I was reading about with distilling whiskeys, or not distilling them, diluting them with water, is that if you're really, really trying to compare whiskeys honestly, then getting them to the same proof can sort of level the playing field.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it almost like a handicap in golf? Like this is now we can all play together.
Yeah, sort of. That it more makes it an apples to apples comparison. Because it won't make it necessarily better or worse, unless you water it down so much that you've sort of ruined the flavor. But it makes it more apples to apples.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then another couple interesting facts. If your bottle has an age statement on it, and my understanding is it's becoming more common to not have age statements on your bottles. But if your bottle has an age statement on it, then that age is the age of the youngest whiskey in the blend, if it's blended. Obviously, because this is single barrel, it's not blended. But when we get over here to the rare breed, we can that is blended.
Okay.
And another thing is that the sort of, if you do have a blended whiskey, its overall mash bill is the aggregate of the mash bills that were blended into it. So if you want to call something a blended bourbon, then you sort of take the different percentages of how much you blended and add up the mash bills according to those percentages, and the overall mash bill still needs to be majority bourbon, or sorry, majority corn in order to legally call it bourbon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Nice. Well, I like the Baker. Baker's fantastic.
Yes.
I'll have to admit, and I want to know your opinion on this. Like, I didn't have a palate for whiskey until I was probably in my late 20s.
Okay.
And I remember being served a hot toddy. I think I told you this story when we hung out last time. Was served a hot toddy.
Yeah.
And I think I was like shoveling snow all day. It was me and my roommates, and we had this several, like a foot and a half or something coming down in Denver. And so we were taking shifts of shoveling the walk and stuff. And my buddy was like, I'll make you a hot toddy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was like a chocolate,
like
maybe a little boozy, maybe put a little peppermint in there.
Yeah.
I just was completely ignorant to the drink, and I had it, and I was like offended. I was just like, this tastes terrible. I had no palate.
Yeah.
I was like, I drink beers, and I'll have a shot, but I'll almost vomit after it. I don't have a taste for this at all.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was probably 28 years old, and a good friend, Kevin Kane, he was like, dude, I'm getting really into bourbon. You got to have this. I'm pretty sure my first was Eagle Rare.
Okay.
And he taught me how to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so now I have this appreciation, but I also have found, like, there's some Irish. I mean, I'm Irish to the bone.
Yeah.
I mean, not truly. I'm an American.
Sure.
I was born here.
Yeah.
Grew up here, but my heritage is Ireland. And there are Irish whiskeys that I'm like, I'm not really into that.
Yeah.
That shows you how American I am.
Yeah.
It's bourbon. It's from Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I like.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've really met a bourbon that I don't like.
Yeah.
Like, I like bourbon. Is that the case for you? Is that, like, there are bourbons you like more than others, but in the end, if it's bourbon, it's good? Or are there ones that you're like, this is kind of outside my palate, and I don't enjoy this one other than the others?
Yeah. I think somewhere in between the two. I've definitely just had, like, the well whiskey at a restaurant and not been a huge fan. It's not something that I would try to collect a bottle of and go out of my way to drink. Yeah, I've definitely had a couple bourbons that were just whatever. Like, for instance, we had one bottle that we had bought with the intention of using it to, like, make eggnog over the holidays. Okay. So I wasn't reading the labels to figure out all the minutia of what I was going to be having. Yeah, I didn't know what the mash bill for that was, right? And ended up drinking the rest of that bottle just, like, casually, in terms of, like, okay, I'm gonna, like, hop on and play games with one of my friends who's back in San Francisco, and I want something to drink that I'm not really gonna be paying attention to because I'm doing this thing with my friend. And
taking sips, getting a buzz.
Exactly.
But it's not
exactly as if we were hanging out in person, because we love doing that. And so that I would just drink with a couple ice cubes, and it was fine, but it wasn't something I enjoyed sitting down with a glass neat that sort of had my full attention and trying to figure it out. You might notice when I drink these, I don't know if this is something that whiskey people do, but it's something that my partner taught me to do. She really loves wine and loves wine tasting, where you sort of, like, swish it around in your mouth in a certain way and bring in a little bit of extra air. I think bringing in extra air matters more for wine than for whiskey. But, really, like, trying to taste it and figure it out.
I wonder if this is part of the wine tasting. I once dated, she was absolutely there's connoisseurs and then there's snobs. And she was a snob.
Yep.
And I think the level up is that you're obnoxious about it.
Yes.
But one thing I picked up was, like, you're almost slurping. Like, I try to, but in that, once it's in your mouth, like, I try to pull in a little air through my lips and, like, create some bubbles and, like, aroma. Like, that's so gross to talk about, but
yes,
I try to slurp without slurping, because
yeah, there's a real art to trying to do that in a way that is both not pretentious and also not really gross, because it could kind of go either way. I'm bringing this up here so I stop hitting it.
Oh, no worries.
For the sake of our listeners.
I think being like, I think snobbery is gross.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, I agree.
I love people who nerd out on a thing, like who are really into it. I loved finding out that you were so into bourbon.
Yes.
That I'm like, oh, dude, you got to teach me, because I like bourbon.
Yeah.
But I don't by any means pretend to know anything about it. So this is fantastic that you're educating me.
Yes. Yeah, and what you said about developing your taste for whiskey, I definitely had the same journey. My first experience with whiskey really was going downtown in San Luis Obispo, where I went to college, the day after my birthday, the day after I turned 21. The day I turned 21, I had a massive paper due, and I went out for dinner at 11:30 and had a beer with my burger, and then went back to writing my paper. I think I went to bed at 2. But the next night, my friend, coincidentally the one who I've been playing games with, also turned 21, and so that was sort of like the birthday shots and go out to bars kind of night.
Okay.
And at the end of that night, I was very drunk and had some of my friends, he was very into whiskey, had some of his old fashioned, and had a similar experience, which was like, oh god, like not only was I like way too drunk to be drinking something with that high of alcohol content, so my body sort of rejected it right away, but the flavor is just like so intense when you're not accustomed to whiskey that I did not drink whiskey for years after that.
Sure.
And then one of my friends who's into whiskey sort of, I won't say got me into it, but got me curious about it again.
Okay.
And then I started drinking whiskey more in the Bay Area, just trying it at restaurants. For a long time, my go-to cocktail was a Moscow Mule.
Okay.
You know, just like good set of flavors.
I like a good mule.
Love a good mule.
I was going to ask if you were a cocktail guy at any time.
Yeah, you know, they're fun here and there. I like to try new ones. I lost the Moscow Mule. That's another story for another time. But that was the first time that I was like throwing up all over the place.
I see what you're saying.
Yes. So no more Moscow Mules for me.
You
so
do
I lost
not keep in touch.
Exactly. And so I had to find another sort of go-to drink when I was out at restaurants and things. And so I started trying whiskeys. I actually think I started trying them because in the bizarre world of Silicon Valley startups, you just have a lot of, our engineering team as a sort of team building exercise would go out to dinners on the company's dime. Because when you have investor money, you can just do dumb shit like that. And we were at some like really nice restaurant. I'm like, you know, this is the place to try whiskey, you know, where somebody else is sort of footing the bill. And if I don't like it, it's no big deal. So that's where I started getting into it. And we can get more into this if we talk about living in the Bay Area. But I'll admit that I started drinking whiskey neat because that's just the coolest way to drink whiskey.
It is.
It is. And that kind of thing matters in the Bay Area in a way that really sucks to live around.
But you succumb to that pressure.
But yes,
right?
Exactly.
And you're kind of glad to do it, aren't you? Because it's such a cool...
Exactly. And that is what living in the Bay Area is like. I'd be happy to talk more about it. I've been trying to come up with the right metaphors to try and explain it.
I've been completely infatuated or intoxicated by the allure of San Francisco. And I got to live there for a brief period, probably a year accumulative. Like it was 3 months here, it was 5 months there, and then another
doing film festivals, right?
Exactly. So over the course of 3 years, I lived there for a year. And I lived in the Presidio. And so and then the festival pretty much took place in Japantown. And so that's what I know is what I could walk to. Just outside the perimeter of Presidio. So I know a couple of those restaurants, a couple of Italian dives kind of things. And then what's going on in Japantown. Other than that, I've driven around the city. I was just like infatuated with it. I'm just like, this is where I want to be. And I actually moved there. It kind of fell apart because my partner at the time, she had second thoughts and backed out. But I already moved out there. That's also another story for another time. But that is a city that I think that the culture can kind of take you like almost like a European city. Like if you visit somewhere and you're just like, oh my God, I like the way they do things. I like what their value system is.
Yeah.
I'm going to adopt
Yeah.
some of these values.
Yeah. When was the last time you were in San Francisco? What was the last year you were there?
Last year I was there would have been 2014.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's when I moved away. Gotcha. And haven't returned since, but I really look forward to. Like now that all the wounds have healed.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
So let me pour you a little bit of this, tell
please.
you about it, and then we can talk about San Francisco.
Cool.
So while I was at the liquor store, they have a huge collection of a bunch of different whiskeys, but a big wall of bourbon. And I had found this because it was on the Wine Advocate top 20 list, and this was the rye of the Rare Bird rye was on the top 20 list, and I bought this one by accident, but I've ended up enjoying it.
Nice.
Also, when I picked this out, the guy next to me was like, I can see that you're looking for good whiskeys. You're going to love this one. And then he recommended me this one.
Oh, fantastic.
And he also recommended me this one. And I picked this one up at the end because it's a $20 whiskey. And it's nice to have those on hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something else that's really interesting about it is that it's bottled in bond. And this is not something I was familiar with, so I had to look it up. There in the whiskey aisle.
Mm-hmm.
So what bottled in bond means, it's a very old legislation. I think the act that created this designation was in 1897.
Okay.
And it was a response to the adulteration in whiskeys, that a lot of whiskeys at the time were sold in bottle, or sort of sold by the bottle, as opposed to by the barrel, and tracing their provenance was really difficult, and they were often mixed with other crap. Though the item that most stood out to me on Wikipedia was formaldehyde, which, boy, is that not something I would want to ingest.
Holy shit. Are you serious?
Yeah. And so this designation, bottled in bond, was created to allow, if you meet certain criteria, you can put this on your bottle, and then, consumers would have much higher faith that what you say they're drinking is what they're actually drinking.
Okay.
And I was reading something that said that, this is one of the first instances of a consumer protection law. Ooh, this one's very sweet. Pretty nice. So not as alcoholic.
Ooh, a little fruity.
Yeah. So let me tell you about what bottled in bond means. One distiller, one distillery in a single season.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be aged in a federally bonded warehouse. I don't know how much that's really relevant these days, but I imagine back in the day that there was, oversight about the barrels weren't being tampered with, that kind of thing, weren't being diluted.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be aged for at least 4 years and at exactly 100 proof. So whenever you see bottled in bond, you'll also always see 100 proof. And you'll always see the age statement, if there is one, that's at least 4 years. Yeah, so kind of a cool designation.
Wow, so that's very specific, very regulated.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, did you see this on the label and say, I need to delve in, or did the guy at the
he kept saying the term, and I did the thing
bottled in bond?
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is a bottled in bond. It's really cool, especially at this price point.
Were you just like, oh yeah,
exactly. I absolutely did the thing where I just acted like I knew what he was talking about and sort of took it in, and then afterwards I'm like, what did he say? Bottled in bond? Okay, let me look that up, and then learned about it. I thought it was pretty cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, in San Francisco, what would be your, I'll make it simple, top 2 bourbon bars to go to? And if it has to expand to
I actually
top 10,
don't really,
that's totally
I
fine.
wasn't as into bourbon when I was living.
Okay.
So I actually lived in Oakland. Because the startup I was working for was in Oakland, and by this point, San Francisco had a real reputation. So the housing market, as everyone knows, in San Francisco is out of control.
When I was moving there, I was looking at Berkeley and Oakland.
Okay.
I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to afford to live in any of the neighborhoods I like.
It's outrageous. I mean, my friend lived in Nob Hill, the Tender Knob. So that section in between the Tenderloin and Nob Hill.
Yes.
And had a very crummy old studio that was $14.90 a month. So I decided to live in Oakland. Which I do not regret. It was really cool living in Oakland. I wasn't super into bourbon at the time. I didn't really know anybody else that was either, so I didn't get the chance to go to a lot of bourbon bars. But I'd love to if I went back, because there's definitely, I know there are some cool ones.
Yeah.
Especially ones that are like very themed to be kind of like, you know, a dark room and leather chairs and all that.
Oh, I love that. I love that English pub style of really fine like leather booths.
Yeah.
Leather bound bar stools, things like that, and it's kind of dank. It's kind of dingy. You kind of have to squint to see somebody's facial expression.
Exactly. And gives you like a real feeling of like the people around you at the table, you're all kind of huddled together, and like there's, I don't know, some kind of privacy in that environment.
Agreed. Yes. So take a step back from the bourbon. Was there a watering hole that was like a favorite, that was cool, stylish, that was, let's say, within walking distance of your place?
Yeah. I mean, there was a place across from the office that was a beer bar, and it was okay. God, I spent too much time in a couple of tiki bars because we had this one very outgoing person in our office who always managed to, you know, round people up to go there. Yeah, I don't know if I can say that there was any particular bar that I really loved. It was a weird time living in San Francisco. Yeah.
I unfortunately didn't get to spend much time in Oakland, even though I was considering living there. Yeah. Like, I was from afar. Yeah. At that time, I was planted in Utah. Yeah. And working for the Sundance Institute. Yeah. And I wanted to move to the Bay Area. Yeah. But I was like, looking at the prices, and I'm like, okay, well, San Fran, I'm not gonna be able to afford anything. Yeah. Like, I would have loved to be anywhere in the Presidio or near Golden Gate Park or something like that. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's not likely. Yeah. So I was looking at Oakland and looking at listings in Oakland, and then looking at Berkeley, and I didn't have experience in Oakland. I think maybe I visited one friend there once, got to know her neighborhood slightly. Yeah. But in Berkeley, I didn't get to know either. But had a great day in Berkeley. A group of friends, we all had been planning this for a while. We went to the horse races in Berkeley. Yeah. And so we treated it like we were going to the Derby. Yeah. And all the guys got dressed up in vests and bow ties, and we all had like Tams and bowlers on and things like that. I imagine
literally nobody like did a second take at you walking through Berkeley.
That's it was fantastic. And what was hilarious is walking around town. Yeah. We felt comfortable, but actually at the horse track, and we're just surrounded by a bunch of degenerate gamblers.
Yeah. That tracks for you.
It was a complete, and it was like 75-cent beer day. So God. It attracted just the lowest of the low. Yeah. And all the gals were wearing sundresses and like giant derby hats. But those are my experiences. Yeah. Few and far between. But
yeah, I always got the impression in Berkeley that it's a place that you could just kind of do your own thing, which was very nice. That is not different vibes in Oakland and different vibes in San Francisco. Yeah. And so the experience that I had, I really loved living in Oakland, because Oakland, I think, is the most diverse city in the United States. Wow. I didn't know that until I was leaving, but it totally tracks for me, because there were days I would walk to work and like literally hear 5 different languages spoken on the way there. And that's really cool. It definitely, especially being, a kid from like suburbs in Arizona, it was a really good experience for me. But so it's really popular in San Francisco to hate San Francisco, because it's sort of widely understood that the culture is not what it used to be, because just so much tech money has moved in, and so many people working in tech have moved in, that the culture feels very different. I think the general vibe is that it has been sort of adulterated, and all of that wealth hasn't really, I think it's debatable if it's impacted the city for the positive. And certainly things like the Tenderloin is an instance where it hasn't, right? That San Francisco has always had a large homeless population because, it's had favorable laws. I mean, when I say favorable laws, like we're talking very, very low bar. United States doesn't have great laws around being, around how you treat unhomed people.
Mm-hmm.
But San Francisco is a place you could survive, and there was some sense of community. And it's really bad now. Like, just all the wealth has moved in and, like, compressed all these unhomed people into, like, these tiny little areas of the city. And, like, you walk by the Civic Center and you see, like, spent needles on the ground, right? And people in, like, really, really, truly bad shape.
And defecating on the ground.
And it's hard not to escape the sense that, like, of injustice, right? That you have, like, the building that Uber occupies right here on Market Street, with, like, how many millions they poured into that and all of the wealth that they have in the city, versus, like, these people who literally, like, are hardly living a life at all, right?
Yeah.
And not being taken care of in any way. And so, like, I think that really hangs over San Francisco. I watched a movie in Oakland that came out while I was living there, at the Grand Lake Theater, which is a beautiful theater. It was The Last Black Man in San Francisco, that is about this family, or, these two, well, I won't go over to the plot summary, but one of the characters, I think it does a good job depicting what San Francisco is now, and sort of the ways that it's been, like, taken over by tech bros, and, like, people just profiting off, like, the real estate market, and the general disregard for who was in San Francisco before tech was in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But one of the things that the character says at the end is he's, like, driving by another character and scolding them for hating on San Francisco, because that's the popular thing to do. And he says, you're not allowed to hate San Francisco if you never knew San Francisco. And I watched that and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop complaining about San Francisco, because my relationship to San Francisco is that I never knew San Francisco. That whatever it was that made people want to go there so desperately, and, like, what made San Francisco Pride legendary back when Pride wasn't mostly tech companies marching employees down the street. I never got to experience that. Yeah. And so I don't know what it used to be, but I do know that what it is now is not really a place I enjoy being. I did really like Oakland. It's sort of behind the curve in terms of gentrification. That said, I had a friend visit me, and we were just walking around uptown, and there's a corner that I stood at and realized that I could see 5 huge, like, luxury skyscrapers under construction or recently completed from that corner.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of uptown, where there's, like, all these, huge skyscrapers anyway. I'm actually interested to see what will happen with all of that.
Where that development will go.
Yeah, given coronavirus and all the people sort of leaving the Bay Area for the same reason I left the Bay Area, which is that I moved there to work, and I no longer have to be there to work, and so I want to go somewhere that I actually want to be. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Oakland was a really fun place to live. Really incredible food. Really incredible diversity. My favorite place to go and drink probably was a restaurant that my partner worked at, like, very, very part-time, because she's the kind of person who will take a serving job voluntarily in order to meet people and get to know the staff, get to know the people who come into the restaurant. And she worked at a small Italian restaurant called Mama that, it's just like your neighborhood date night spot.
That's awesome.
Very small, like this narrow little restaurant, which is like 2 rows of tables stacked really close to each other. But they had really incredible food and really, really incredible wine. The 2 owners also owned a wine shop a few doors down, and that's how they sort of got into the business. And going there with my partner is how I got turned on to wine. And so that's really what I was doing in terms of drinking in the Bay Area.
That sounds like a great place, too.
Yes.
I mean, other than, like, a Greasy Spoon diner.
Yeah. We had a couple of those. Yeah.
I think, like, a neighborhood date night spot, especially if it's Italian. Like, oh, my God. That's maybe my second favorite restaurant going. Like, style of restaurant.
Yeah. There was a lot of incredible food there, though. I mean, and a lot of it was just, like, there was a Thai street food place down the corner from me that had, like, the best pad Thai I've ever had. And a place a few blocks up from where we worked that was not just Mediterranean food, but, like, Lebanese food specifically that had, God, I mean, like, we still talk about this restaurant and hope that it will still be open after the pandemic is over so we can go revisit it. There's just really incredible food there, and there's, like, really incredible representations from cuisines around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Oakland also had like the most bona fide Chinatown I've ever been in. God, there's got to be like 20 or more blocks that is really like walking into a different culture.
Yeah.
Like it, in the sense that it is, these blocks are full of businesses and housing that like does not cater to like your typical like European white American at all. Right? The languages are in Chinese, like the banks are in Chinese. They're like Asian grocery stores that are like truly Asian grocery stores.
You feel like you need to be bring your passport to
exactly
get into this neighborhood.
Exactly. One of the coolest little details that stood out to me is that there were a number of intersections that had the full intersection was shut down and people would walk diagonally across the intersection.
Oh yeah.
Which I haven't traveled much outside of the US. I'm looking forward to later in my life, certainly. But it's such a famous like cinematic staple when somebody's showing a shot of like Hong Kong or another Asian city, to have those like the whole intersection shutdowns, everyone like just mobs across it. I've never seen that in the US, but like they have intersections like this in Chinatown in Oakland. Best Chinese food I've ever had. Oh my god, miss it so bad.
Where? Yeah,
there's a restaurant called Shandong.
Okay,
that they made their own noodles and they just everything they had on their menu was so good.
Yeah,
so flavorful. Really, really miss it. I mean, truly puts like Americanized Chinese food to shame.
Did you have? So you said you're originally from Arizona.
Yes.
Did you have this appreciation for food before coming to San Francisco or maybe another big city? Was there an experience before? Did you grow up kind of like knowing this was a passion and knowing you had an appreciation for this?
That's a great question. I don't kind of. I think that my dad took us to a number. So my dad was the kind of parent who would like force us to like try new foods. I was a really, really picky eater growing up.
Same.
But my dad liked it when we would try seafood of different kinds and just new things on the menu we hadn't had before. And so, I did get exposed to some food that way. And, he would take us to like nicer restaurants. So like I've had, when one of my siblings graduated high school, we went to like a really nice steakhouse, and that was like the best steak I had had up to that point. And so I sort of got a taste for it there. I think I went to school in San Luis Obispo, like I said, and there's not really a lot of great like non-American cuisines in San Luis Obispo that I recall, but there is some pretty good food. Really great barbecue. A couple of just like literally like the best sandwiches that I've ever had. If you're ever in SLO, High Street Deli.
High Street Deli.
Shout out. I drove my partner and I drove through SLO together, and she was so skeptical, right? Because everybody says like, yeah, there's this great sandwich spot in my college town, which I think everyone interprets as like, I went to a sandwich spot high and it was really great. Which is fair, especially because this place is literally, its street address is 420 High Street.
Hilarious.
But she was blown away, and she goes to like a yoga retreat in San Luis Obispo. So every year she like gets a High Street sandwich now when she goes.
Yes.
One on the way in, one on the way out.
Nice.
So truly, if you have the opportunity,
did you ever go to sandwich?
No.
Like no, you would just try anything on the menu.
Sorry, I do. Yes, I do have a go-to sandwich, the Dutch Punch.
The Dutch Punch.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It's on Dutch Punch bread, has some avocado. I think it's a turkey sandwich with bacon. But then they have this like spicy like chili chipotle mayo that they put on, and just like all those flavors just work together so well. The spiciness is enough to overcome the sort of fatty creaminess of the avocado.
Okay.
I think there's red onion on there too. God, it's an incredible sandwich, and like their Dutch crunch bread is so crunchy, like it will scratch the roof of your mouth.
Nice.
Yeah, great sandwich.
I mean, rough, but.
Yes,
yeah, hurts so good.
Yeah, exactly. Just be careful. Just try to scrape. Yeah, it's a great sandwich. I recommend it. But I mean, I had a friend who went there who was like a true connoisseur of sandwiches, which again sounds like a joke, but he gave a talk and literally tried every sandwich spot in San Luis Obispo in order to give a 5-minute talk about what the best sandwiches of the different categories are. And he would go in there and always talk to the same guy and say like, make me whatever sandwich you want to make. Like whatever sounds interesting to you, just make it and serve it to me, and I don't care. Don't tell me what it is.
Ooh, that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, if you're an adventurous type, absolutely.
I like that, especially when you get to a level where you like trust the person.
Yeah.
Even if it's a bartender and you're like, "Hey, will you give me a pour or something?" And
Yeah.
that I don't know.
Totally.
Like we've established enough of a relationship here that you know what I like.
Mm-hmm.
Take me a little bit to the outer bounds.
Yeah.
Like, let me try something new.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, should we try?
Yes.
A little something next. What's coming next?
Why don't we try the Buffalo Trace?
Let's do it.
Save this guy for last.
Cool.
All right, so what did I know about this one? Another straight bourbon whiskey. Interestingly, Buffalo Trace, as far as I can tell, does not disclose their mash bill, but people speculate that it is about 90% corn and 10% rye.
Okay.
And I don't think I was able to find the mash bill for early times either, but I didn't search too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very sweet.
Very sweet.
It smells like syrup.
It does. It actually does. It smells like we're about to pour this on our pancakes.
Yes.
This is actually one that I buy quite often, and I can be a bit of a creature of habit. Like I'll get in a rhythm with something.
Yeah.
And tasting these other two has actually been like this. I found this was sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The Bakers I found sweet, not nearly as sweet as this.
Yeah.
As the Trace, but this one I found smoky notes that they were really appealing. Like I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to mix in a little bit more of a smoky bourbon.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would love to build just a bourbon bar. Like I know people have a bar and we've got a couple of selections of gin, if you like tequila, which I want to do that as well for if you come over and you're not into bourbon. I've got friends who are like, no, I love a good tequila. I'm like, I can't tell you anything about tequila other than my gag reflex knows it well. And tequila just, I mean, I'll blast one back with you, but like other than that, like I'm not enjoying it.
Gotcha. Not even a margarita.
I don't know, man. You have to show me.
Yeah.
Like same with like I don't have a palate for vodka either. Like it all tastes like rubbing alcohol to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean that is kind of vodka.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they're vodka connoisseurs out here. They're gonna be like, "How dare you?"
Well, I've heard people like talk about like a really expensive, really smooth vodka, and you shoot it back, and it's really smooth.
Yeah.
Which I worked an event in LA at a vodka bar, and you would go into a room and you put on these giant fur coats and these fur hats. It was super Russian, and you go into the tasting room.
Yeah.
And the tasting room is like minus 18 degrees.
Oh my god.
And the bar top is a giant ice cube.
Yeah.
And they're pouring you these little shots and you're taking them back.
Yeah. I would be into that. I would try that.
That was cool. That was cool. And I absolutely like had some shots that were like, okay, that was smooth. Like that didn't burn on the way down. That was kind of nice.
Yeah.
But I think it would be so cool to just have 25 bourbons in front of you, and you could tell somebody about each one of them and be like, let's try a little bit. Yeah.
So if you're interested in smoky whiskeys,
okay,
this is something I learned about recently because I bought a bottle of, God, I'm gonna blank on the name, but a single malt whiskey, and I didn't really know what that meant. And so malt is malted barley, and the process of malting is you take barley and you lay it out on a big warehouse floor and you get it moist so that the barley sprouts. And after it's sprouted, God, I think it's for like a couple of weeks, maybe it's just a couple days. Don't quote me on this. Wikipedia has the real facts for you.
Sure.
You like essentially roast it to stop the germination process.
Okay.
And that vaguely is the malting process. And you'll see some whiskeys that are called like peated. And that is when you like burn peat and smoke the barley as it malts.
Wow.
And I believe that is how you get some of these like, you know, Irish whiskeys or single malt whiskeys that have like very, very, very intense smoky flavor.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of smoky flavors. So I wrote this on my list as like try at a restaurant before buying a bottle.
Okay.
But
try before you buy.
Exactly. But we could absolutely do that.
Uh-huh.
And that might be somewhere to look if you want like a really, really smoky flavor.
Well, I enjoyed that. I realized that I'm very accustomed to a sweet whiskey now that I'm tasting Buffalo Trace next to these other two.
Yeah.
My other go-tos are Four Roses, as we've talked about, which is a cheaper bottle. Very affordable.
Totally.
And Eagle Rare.
Okay. I don't know if I've had Eagle Rare.
That one, I was it was a toss-up between what I was going to buy for our tasting tonight.
Yeah.
And I was like, Trace is here, I'll do Trace. Eagle Rare, it's I think of it as a little more smoky.
Yeah.
And then Basil Hayden is the one that I would buy. That was kind of like my special occasion.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy this for Thanksgiving dinner or something.
Yeah.
And I remember that as being smoother and sweeter. But that'll have to be incorporated maybe into our next podcast.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest differentiator I find between cheaper whiskeys I've tried and nicer whiskeys I've tried, or just really more expensive, not even, you know, there's room for niceness outside of price, certainly, is that more expensive whiskeys tend to be smoother. And I think that's a function of aging, but I'm not 100% sure. It's
almost
something I'm definitely going to...
takes an edge off of
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I've had some very, very smooth whiskeys. I'm really trying to get my hands on a bottle of 12-year Knob Creek.
Knob Creek, yeah.
Knob Creek. Sorry, I'm thinking San Francisco.
I love it.
Knob Creek. I had a glass of it when we were at dinner the other night at the Whiskey Still, and God, it was so smooth. It was so good.
Nice.
But they didn't have a bottle when I was shopping the other night, so I had to hunt around for one if any exist. It was on I think it was number 2 for Whiskey Advocate's top 20 whiskeys of 2020.
Okay.
So I imagine that they disappeared pretty quickly.
Pairing question for you.
Oh gosh.
do you
yeah.
pair with meals, even if this is like, hey, it's something I'm working on, like I want to be more thoughtful when I know I'm gonna order a porterhouse steak, or I know I'm gonna order the linguine with clam sauce. Is there a whiskey that I choose over the other?
So to my understanding, I don't know if there's anything quite like wine, where like any meal has a sort of like category of good pairing options. A lot of my pairing is sort of dominated by the fact that my partner just loves wine. So if I cook a nice dinner for us at home, we're going to open one of our bottles of wine that pairs well. And that's what I'm going to be drinking with dinner.
I love that. I can't wait for Caitlin to teach me about wine.
Absolutely. Nice. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. I mean, I cannot tell you just like what I thought wine was, and then meeting her and having some of the wines that she discovered working for this restaurant. It's a whole world of like natural wines and orange wines and really, really interesting stuff. I'm sure your partner told you about.
Which you guys had.
Yeah.
That's right. You guys had a lovely dinner.
Yeah.
And hosted us, and I had to bail.
Yes.
The second vaccine really took me down.
Yes. Yeah.
I truly was so sad that I had to cancel. But what would have made me even more heartbroken is if Vanessa couldn't go. I know she was like, "Are you sure it's okay if I leave you?" Like I was like running 100-degree temperature and stuff. Like I was in rough shape, but I knew I was going to get better. I knew this wasn't going to last. And honestly, if you guys had prepped and planned a meal and then fed no one. Yeah. Like that would have broken my heart. So I'm so glad that Vanessa got to go, and she raved to me about the meal you cooked.
We tried to impress her.
And then the wine that was served. Yeah. That it really was an orange in color and in flavor, right? Wine.
So, oh gosh, I hope I get this right. Orange wines, I believe, are white grapes fermented with their skin on.
Oh,
and that creates the flavor, sort of like a more funky, interesting flavor profile. I mean, I say more interesting. I'm sure they're white wine lovers, but a really interesting kind of funky flavor profile and that orange color.
It creates the flavor as well as the color?
Yeah. Yeah, it changes both the color and the flavor.
Oh, wow, that's
and then
cool.
natural wines are fermented in bottle.
Okay.
And then, they tend to have a little bit of residue from that process at the bottom of the bottle. And that also, like, adds to, like, the funky flavor. I believe that we had a natural orange wine for dinner.
Nice.
Yeah, big fan.
Nice.
Yeah, there's some interesting wines out there. Sparkling reds, all kinds of natural wines. Yeah, we could totally get into wine as well. You should honestly have Caitlin on. She would love to.
We will. Oh,
yes, very good.
For sure. I would love to do a tasting with her as well. Shall we do the...
Before we move on from this topic, yes, I'd love to pour some of this for us. It was a real sign of friendship that you couldn't come and Vanessa still did come, because let me tell you, there are not many double dates I would be signed up for where if Caitlin couldn't go, I would still go.
Yeah.
Like, almost certainly I'd be like, oh, sorry, plans aren't going to work tonight. Caitlin's sick. We both have to stay home.
Totally.
And so that was a real...
Oh, I'm glad that came across, because and truly, like, I don't think we gave you guys the word that I was going to have to back out of our dinner date until, I don't know, like maybe 3 in the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah.
It was to that point that I was still planning. Like, I was like, I'm going to turn the corner.
Yeah.
I'm going to, like, this is, I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to come out of this. We're going to be good. And then, it was like 3 o'clock, and I was like, babe, I don't think I can.
Yeah.
I don't think I can do this. I don't think I'm coming out. I'm still running a fever. This is not good. I can't be social.
Yeah.
And we came up with a game plan.
Yeah.
And we were so happy that you guys are still cool with, like, hey, one of us can still come. Would love to still enjoy. So I can't wait to still come over and see you.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to cooking you a nice meal. It was the first time I got to cook a real meal. I've been doing a lot of, like, Instapot meals and slow cooker meals because they're just so convenient since Caitlin and I both work.
Totally.
But it was nice to be able to pull out, the cast iron pan and all the other stuff and just really make a huge mess in the kitchen cooking like the real way. So let me tell you about this. Wild Turkey, Rare Bird, Bourbon, barrel proof. So this is the highest proof we've drank so far.
Nice.
116.8. Just
booyah.
To be clear, 58% alcohol by volume.
58. Okay.
So a lot of alcohol in there.
Yeah.
I had this the other night when we were at dinner, and I let Caitlin and Vanessa smell them. And Vanessa's like, I shouldn't even smell this before I drive. And she has a point.
Call me an Uber.
So mash bill, 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. The price range here is $45 to $55. Something I was very pleasantly surprised about. I had heard of Whiskey Advocate before, but haven't really looked into it because I assumed, any top whiskey list is going to have, like, I know whiskeys can be outrageously expensive, right? I'm not going to be out here spending like $1,000 on a bottle of whiskey, especially with how relatively new I am to enjoying them. But I was really pleased to find out that Whiskey Advocate also takes into account price and availability. And so a lot of their top bottles are like $40, $50, $60, the occasional like $120 bottle. I was very, very jazzed to find that out.
That's great.
So all of these are a lot more affordable than I thought they would be.
That's very affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine 1,000 bottles. Yeah. I'd be like, wait, so...
Yeah. God, I mean, I remember watching like some random stream where the guy was into whiskeys and it was part of some weird like whiskey vault collection club where they'd only open their vault like once a year or something, and the whiskeys were like some for like $4,000. I was like, this is not my scene.
That's for the wealthy.
Yes. Yeah.
There are certainly some podcasts and some podcasters that I listen to where they start getting into their car collection, and I kind of just zone out.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm like, good for you guys. Like, you're so far above my pay grade. You're talking about vehicles that I can't even imagine renting.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine like wanting to
buying, driving. Yeah, it's when somebody talks about a bottle of wine that's worth $15,000 or a bottle of whiskey that's worth $9,000. It's just like,
absolutely.
I'm like, I can't. Like the number of bottles of whiskey I could buy with that money.
Yeah,
that's all I'm focused on.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm not your audience. quite yet. Cool.
Right.
Okay.
So another fun fact about this bottle.
Please.
No age statement.
Okay.
But from the information I was able to find, this is a blend of a 6-year, 8-year, and 12-year-old whiskeys.
Yeah.
Which means that if they were to put a age statement on here, the highest they could put is 6 years.
Okay.
Love the nose on this whiskey. To me, I get like maple syrup, a little bit of honey. You get the like harshness of the high alcohol content.
Yeah, it's like sweet until it like spikes your nose.
Yes, this might be my new favorite bottle to just have on hand for, for just the weekend.
Oh, that's a nice bit of everything.
Ooh.
It's like this. It's like sweet. It burns.
Down.
Yeah, it burns my throat all the way down, but it's sweet all around my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yes, I'm very happy with this pickup.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when you went in there, you were looking for a version.
I was looking for the rare breed rye.
Okay.
Which was well rated on the Whiskey Advocate top 20 list. Because we shop at the place down the road or on College, Wilbur's,
yep.
And they have a huge wall. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that sponsor will come through. We can keep doing whiskey episodes.
God,
who knows? I feel like it's mandatory on podcasts to like joke about sponsorship deals.
Be hilarious. The first iteration of this podcast, I was writing fake sponsorship.
Nice.
Where really it was just like making scathing jokes.
Yes,
about
absolutely.
Fictitious sponsors.
Yes,
but yeah,
let me tell you, if you ever do a VPN sponsorship, I refuse to participate.
Oh, really?
Total bullshit. I like literally cringe so hard. Because we won't go into all the technical details, but these like consumer VPNs, there are cases where they're good, and it is when you're at a coffee shop on an open Wi-Fi network, having a sort of like consumer product VPN will help you a little bit security-wise and privacy-wise. That is it. Goddamn.
Well, this is fascinating, and I would absolutely love to do a full podcast with you on this. Give people just a little bit of your background. Yes. So I'm a self-taught programmer. I studied computer science. I have worked for a number of startups, one in the Bay Area, one in New York. I'm now doing contracting work, mostly doing front-end and back-end web development with my friend. But my school really loved computer security. It's like a big trend in the industry right now, and universities tend to try to like put their money and excitement towards trends in the industry. Those are the professionals you can get to come talk. Those are the classes that if you take them, you can put cool stuff on your resume that'll get you a job. And computer security is a really hot topic right now for a good reason, right? I think everybody, even people with absolutely no technical background, know about computer security with just what's happening in the news. Everything from like election fraud to the oil distributor getting shut down by a like ransomware attack. So computer security is a big topic, and where I went to college, the computer security club was kind of the place to go if you were really into just spending all your time doing computer stuff and wanted to hang out with other people who are also really into spending all their time doing computer science stuff. Yeah. And so we sort of had a computer security focus by what the club mandated us be. And so I got pretty into some computer security topics. Okay. And it's not really something I'd like to pursue as a career, just because I don't think the work in and of itself is all that enjoyable. Not that, web development is necessarily more enjoyable, which is a whole other topic. So I have a decent background, and the way that VPNs work just doesn't make sense as a consumer product. Okay. There are people who sign in. So VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. Okay. And it is a way to pretend that to use cryptography to pretend that you are on a local network, which has a lot of like security and privacy benefits, right? And the way that it makes sense is that you work for a company who does you have access to customer data or other sensitive information. They set up a VPN, and then you connect to it. And then it's like you're talking to them directly with nobody else eavesdropping. Consumer VPN products don't work like that.
because you're connecting to the public internet. So like it's like you have an enclave here, and then you take one step to your VPN provider, and the whole rest of the trip is still on the public internet, unprotected by the VPN.
Bypassed all protection.
Exactly.
And you just
you immediately
forward.
Step out of your enclave, and none of that shit matters. So, but if you're on a public network, then that public network, when you're talking directly to your VPN, all of that will be protected. You can absolutely cut all this from the episode because, boys, it's not.
No. You know what I would like to do, Jared, is I want to leave this as the teaser for the next episode, because the next topic I would really love to get into with you. I just finished the book American Kingpin.
Okay.
About the creator of the Silk Road.
Oh God, yeah.
And I would love to delve into that with you next time and talk about cybersecurity and truly what you know as a software engineer, which is complete Greek to me.
Sure.
And so was our topic today. Like other than the fact that if we're using that analogy, I love Greek. I love dabbling in Greek. I like the way it sounds and tastes.
Absolutely.
But you taught me a lot more about what it is to appreciate it, and I appreciate you for coming on the podcast, Jared.
Thank you. I am most excited to have somebody else to learn more with, because there's nothing like being able to have a bottle of whiskey with somebody else and be able to say, here's what I'm getting from this. Here's what I enjoy. This isn't quite working for me. I'm really picking up, the mash bill, high rye percent, totally taste that in this. I want to have that experience. Let's absolutely do it.
I think you're teaching me a new appreciation for something that I already loved, but now I get to love it to a new depth.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to you.